All right, we are ready for another Dr. Sadler's philosophy pop-up. And the topic that I decided to pick this month to talk about is banning and blocking on the online forums, media, whatever you want to call them. It's something that I've been giving a lot of thought to and occasionally having discussions with colleagues about, especially those who are as tied into the online world as I am. So I thought I would, put out some of my reflections and practices and, see what people thought of that and discuss that today. And I think that, if the first thing I want to say is that generally, I don't have too much of a problem with banning or blocking people on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Where else do I do it? Occasionally on Google Plus, sometimes on LinkedIn. It tends to be for different reasons. And I'm sort of, I suppose, if there's a spectrum where like one end of the spectrum is every single contribution that a person makes to the marketplace of ideas is absolutely important. And, unless it's totally egregious, in how bad or offensive it is, we shouldn't ban it or block it or take any action. And then there would be like the other end of the spectrum, which would be like, hey, if you cross any lines whatsoever, like if you use a swear word or ever attack another user or something like that, we'll ban you and block you and do that. And then there's everything in between. And actually, I not only do I have to do this in terms of my own online presence, but I also have to do this to a certain degree as editor of Stoicism Today when we have comments that become too aggressive, incivil, you could say, and I also have to do it in online forums, believe it or not, for my academic online classes. And usually what I end up doing in cases like that for classes or for Stoicism Today is I'll say, listen, here's the comments policy, and you're starting to really go over the line. I'm going to remove your comment. Don't do it again. And occasionally I'll get people who are fairly reasonable about that. Quite often they double down and then they have to be banned. And I think this is actually a very important topic because we do have to deal with, trolling of all different sorts. And it's not something that is going to go away anytime soon. It's really part of the online environment. It's been part of the online environment since it first came out. And it's not going to disappear. So this is something that I think philosophers need to put some thought into. And my own views and practices on it are, I guess I'll just sort of lay them out, and we'll see what people make of it or what they have to say about it. Because I'm interested in thinking some of these things through that I haven't completely thought through. I see people are asking all sorts of questions that are totally unrelated to the topic of the hangout for today. So I'll get to those in a while, but I'm going to give priority to questions and comments that actually have to do with the topic. This isn't just an AMA. This is a little bit more focused. So what does it take to get banned or blocked? It really depends on the format. And so let me say that LinkedIn is kind of an outlier. I do get a few people every once in a while who get themselves banned or blocked, or I remove them as a connection for the same reason that I would on like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. But it winds up usually being the fact that they're trying to pitch me some sort of service and they didn't do their due diligence. And so I think that's something worth exploring. What do I mean by this? I get LinkedIn requests from people, and I generally say yes to LinkedIn requests unless it's somebody who's clearly just trying to grow their network. They have 16 connections. They don't know me from Adam, and I don't know why I should harness my 1,000+ connections for them. But you get a lot of people who think that LinkedIn is a strategy for essentially pitching things to other people. And I don't have a problem with that per se. What I do have a problem with are people who are lazy, people who don't do their work when they're pitching. Because if you're pitching me with the kind of business that I have and the interest that I have, the same sort of thing that you would be pitching to, I don't know, some management executive somewhere, you're clearly doing the wrong sort of well, you're not even doing research, you're just sort of sending stuff out there into the ether and hoping that it sticks. And why does that bother me? Because it's wasting my time, and my time is valuable. And on LinkedIn, it's all business stuff. So if you're making a connection to me, you're definitely already taking up a resource, which is my time, right? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, that it's also the case there, but it's not quite so direct. And so I do, in fact, occasionally ban and block people. Usually I just remove them as a connection and drop them. So let's switch now to talking about the more, let's call them more personalized social media, less straight business stuff where we're hashing things out. When people get into arguments, I actually created a YouTube video just to deal with people who seem to want to debate. And so now if somebody's being very contentious, like if they start out saying, I post something about something and then they start sounding off about it. I think a lot of people assume that in the online environment, those of us who are content creators or who are putting things out there are sort of like there for them. And we are in an abstract sense, but we're not there for them like 24/7, willing to hear them out, doing, lots and lots of engagement, unless there's already a relationship built up, a relationship that's based on some sort of mutual respect and trust. I think other people, view it a different way. Some people really love to debate. And, so they create channels and Facebook pages, and that's great for them, right? And if they have the time to do that, more power to them. Other people, have other reasons for doing what they do. I'm primarily about putting content out there that I think is going to be helpful for people. And I can occasionally be wrong about something. And when I am, I generally admit it. But if I put a video out there and I'm claiming that Aristotle said X, Y, Z, hell, I've been reading and studying Aristotle for, I don't know, like 30 years now, and teaching on him for almost 20. So the odds of me actually getting it mixed up are probably pretty low. And, if somebody's got some tendentious read, because they got into somebody who doesn't like Aristotle, or they have a particular reading of Aristotle, like let's say they got him through scholastic philosophy or through Rand or something like that, they may be off base, right? And if they want me to take the time to discuss the matter with them, then in my view, they have to follow certain basic rules of engagement. If you were to come up to somebody on the street and just start spouting stuff off to them, imagine you came to a lecture by an author and you immediately got up and you were like ranting about something. They wouldn't put up with that very long. I mean, I usually find some way to turn the conversation back to what we're actually talking about. But it's not incumbent upon them to answer you. It's not as if we have an automatic right. Everybody has a right to express themselves, right? But you don't have a right automatically to have somebody engage you. And I see a lot of people who insist on this. And interestingly, it's you'd say, well, that's probably a male thing. No, it's pretty equal opportunity. It's more of a jerk thing, an entitled jerk thing, where people are like, you have to engage me because you put the content out there. And I think what they're missing is, you know, when we create a channel, that's our channel. Now, it also belongs to YouTube, but it's sort of like going to somebody's studio or classroom or house. You're coming in as a guest. And if you act like a jerk, you're not going to be able to be a guest for very long. I mean, I've kicked people out, when I was younger and had guests who were jerk. I've kicked people out of my house before, or my mom's house, people who were in school, with me and who I thought transgressed certain lines, and I'm pretty tolerant when it comes to that sort of stuff. You get a couple chances, but if you screw up, that's that, you know. And so now one of the I think side topics of this, and then I'll start answering questions in just a minute, is banning and blocking. It seems like a rather permanent solution, right? You block somebody, and then they can't participate. And on YouTube, it doesn't mean they can't view your videos. It just means that they can't comment on your videos. On Facebook, if you actually block somebody, it means that they can't see your content, right? And so my page has quite a few people blocked who were acting like jerks in one way or another, and who usually had multiple chances. On blogs, again, I think it's usually comment. You can't comment on something. What about Twitter? Twitter really only allows you can mute people, so you can't see their stuff, and they can rant at you all they like, or you can block them, in which case they can't see your tweets, but they can see that you have them blocked. Whereas on Facebook, I think they can't even see that you're blocked. You just disappear from it. I'm not quite sure how it works in Google Plus. I've only blocked a few people in there. And I have blocked and unblocked a few people from time to time, but usually when somebody gets blocked, that's it for them. So you could say, well, is that fair that they, there's such a permanent solution to things? And, my view is that, yes, it is, again, because it's whoever's creating the content, whoever is managing the channel or feed or whatever, it's their place, right? And there's nothing that actually prevents somebody who's blocked in one medium from reaching out in another medium, like email, for example, and saying, hey, I saw that you blocked me. I'd like to have a conversation about this. One of the things that made me realize early on when I was still living in Kingston and when I was just really getting started in this YouTube and Google Plus business, I blocked a guy, and he actually called me on the phone, and he was very, very upset about the fact that he'd gotten blocked. And we had a conversation, and I eventually unblocked him. But I only unblocked him after he could show me that he understood where he'd crossed lines and that he was actually sorry about it, right? Because if somebody's just going to keep doing the same thing, it's not like you owe them the opportunity to sit there and say abusive things. And it's not like you're cutting them off from the whole internet, right? It's very different with, for example, there's a case, and I'm not sure how it's been decided, but Donald Trump's Twitter feed, he blocked a number of people, and people were legitimately saying, and I think this would be the case for any elected official, they were legitimately saying, listen, if you're putting the stuff out there and it's part of public debate, you don't have the right to block people from seeing what you're posting or cut them off from commenting on what you're doing. But if you're not in that sort of environment, and you're not say a CEO of a major corporation or something like that, or some major media figure, I think it's perfectly fine for people to block other people, because they're not preventing them from engaging in discussion elsewhere, and they're not totally cutting them off, from other avenues of approach. If you're blocked on Facebook, well, try emailing or Twitter or YouTube or this or that. So I think it's quite interesting. these discussions. And I think a lot of people put up with, and I did this for a while, they put up with a lot of time wasting and tendentious argument and abuse that they don't need to, because they feel like they're under some sort of obligation to the people who are engaging with them. I almost said audience, but it's not really quite even at the level of an audience. I mean, you do have your audience, and those are the people that keep coming back to you over and over again. And over time, I can tell you as a content creator, and as somebody who's engaged in public philosophy, you remember names and handles and stuff like that, and you build up a sort of virtual relation with them. Sometimes it actually becomes face to face. I've met with lots of my fans at conferences or various other venues, right? And then the relationship changes. If they want to give you a hard time, maybe you'll put up with a lot more. But for some random person, it's not as if we owe them something just by being out there. Now, if you're on a platform that's explicitly about public engagement or debate or controversy or something like that, or if you create a channel that's called something like "Debate Me, Bro," then I think you probably don't have quite as much cause to say, oh, you're being rude, you're being mean, you're wasting time with being tendentious or something like that. And then, the last thing that I'll say before I start answering some questions is somebody could say, well, who the hell are you to say that somebody's wasting your time? Well, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. Can you tell if somebody else is wasting your time? Time is the one resource that we will never get back. You can lose a lot of money and make that money back. You can get out of shape and get back into shape again, although that takes a lot of work. You're never going to get any of your time back. So if you waste it on, arguments that are really never going to go anywhere, that's a problem. And you can say, well, how do you know they're never going to go anywhere? You haven't, ventured fully into the marketplace of ideas. Hey, if I'm having a conversation that looks like conversations I've had 20 times already, or I've been doing for years and years and years, I am entitled, just as you are, to decide this is probably going to be a fruitless conversation. So let's go and take a look. So those are my thoughts, right? Kind of rambling there, but let's take a look at some of the questions. I'll come back to some of the ones that aren't really connected, but let's see what we've got in here. Okay, so Caitlin Farabalt, would you say someone pitching a radical idea is grounds for banning if it's belligerent? There's the key thing. If you're doing it belligerently, sure, if somebody wants to ban you, they can. I mean, if you want to pitch a radical idea, there's many ways you can do it, and if you don't understand like how to approach people who you imagine disagree with you, you can take classes on that. There's books out there on that. There's websites. It's called rhetoric, or communications. It's not that difficult to do. I think that and this is another thing too, prudentially, if you have an idea that you think other people are going to have a hard time with, and you want to be taken seriously by them and listened to, you probably ought to try to frame it in a way that's not belligerent. Doesn't mean you have to be like, a pushover or anything, but I mean, there's a huge gap between belligerent and being, a pushover or not assertive. I mean, assertive is in the middle, All right, let's see what else we got. Rob Rabbit says, leaving Facebook is one of the best decisions I've made. I've heard other people say that as well. I think that you can manage your Facebook consumption rationally so that it doesn't aggravate the hell out of you, or suck you into rabbit holes that are also major time sucks. But I don't have any problem with people leaving social media. As a matter of fact, there's going to be an enforced migration pretty soon. I don't know if you guys know about this from Google Plus. Google is closing down Google Plus. So those of us who've been using it for years and years, some of them are like, well, let's go to this platform. Let's go to this platform. I don't know that any of that's actually going to like keep those communities that have been developing for a very long time around, which is, so it's kind of a loss. It's too bad. But Google Plus never took off the way it was intended to, in part because Google didn't really support it adequately. You know, you could say with Facebook, they don't have a choice about whether they support Facebook adequately. That's their main product, right? But Google Plus is always kind of a sideline. All right, let me see here. Jessica Bass, the topic seems akin to Jonathan Rauch's Kindly Inquisitors. I wonder where Rauch would stand on free thought and talk now that the internet has become our prevalent interaction sources. Thoughts? Well, I haven't read Rauch, so I can't say much about that. I mean, it is that raises a really interesting topic, though. So, you know, there's all these great media theorists out there from the past who had quite a bit to say about how interaction between people through media changes things for us. And I would actually include in that the classic three existentialists, you know, fathers of existentialism, Søren Kierkegaard, read his Present Age, you know, for an example, Fyodor Dostoevsky and Friedrich Nietzsche, and maybe Lev Shestov too. But then you've got people who are focusing specifically on media of different sort, like Walter Ong, Marshall McLuhan. I'd include Umberto Eco in there. And now Eco saw the beginnings of the internet, but he didn't live to see how it panned out, you know, in the present, right? But yeah, what would they make of the fact that we are now so tapped in? And, you know, worldwide, like you're seeing me right now on a big iMac that has, you know, a camera, but that's kind of a first world thing. Worldwide, much more people are tapped in on little mobile devices, usually phones, sometimes tablets. And that makes a huge difference as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I have to really say about that. SRJ, then there are those who wear I've been blocked by so-and-so badge with pride. Yeah, there are quite a few people who do that. That's kind of interesting. Now, it could give you some currency in certain areas, right? So you're you know, on the right, and you trumpet the fact that you've been blocked by these people on the left, and see that's a sign that they're not willing to do honest debate and blah 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 blah. But you acted like a jackass. They banned you, right? Now they may have been a little bit more prone to ban you because of the political differences, right? And we could pick anything else we want in there. Happens from people on the left who crow about how they've been banned by people on the right. Happens with the atheist versus, you know, religious people thing. Happens in the splits in the atheist community. Happens over, you know, feminism and the whole transgendered community, and, you know, the whole manosphere on, you know, going back and forth with each other. You could really, and it happens within communities as well, where for the most part they agree with each other, but there's little splits in the community, right? Is it really something to brag about having been banned? Does it give you a kind of currency? It certainly can be a talking point, but it doesn't mean that you actually know anything. It just means that you've managed to transgress enough social norms that people thought that they didn't want to engage with you anymore. So, yeah, that's quite true. And Caitlin follows up saying, that's kind of what I'm getting at, because they were radical and belligerent. They were a troll. They see it as a merit. Okay, well, and I think there's some people you could say who are just committed to trolling as trolling, right? The people who, I would say that there's like the people who are like pure trolls on the one hand, and it doesn't matter what ideology, they'll just pick and choose whatever can tick somebody off. And then there's the more selective trolls who want to own the, you know, usually the libs, right? But it could be own the atheists, own the so-and-so. You know, I guess in a way, we want to use that owning thing. Any owning of that sort is usually a self-owning as well. And it's too bad because, you know, adopting a position like that, that's really something that I should look into. I'm sure there's some really good literature out there on this already, but adopting the position of the troll, um, it stands in the way of personal development and intellectual development. And I mean, the irony is that a lot of the people who do that sort of thing think that they're very intellectually or morally advanced. And you know, somehow the people that they're attacking are less so. But um, that's not my experience dealing with them. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Rob Rabbit, we have too much power put into giants like Google that can lead public opinion wherever they please. I'd agree with you on that. We are in a media environment where, you know, we've got a lot of problems with it, right? And book production for trade books is done by 5 big publishers, and then, you know, you can be a self-published author, but Amazon is your main source of distribution for that. And then we have this, you know, huge social media networks, which have massive effects on things. I mean, Instagram, you know, because people love sunflower so much, leads to people trampling sunflower fields and destroying crops of people who are trying to earn a living. You know, and yeah, we get a lot of our information and news now from a relatively small amount of sources in terms of platforms, but a lot of voices coming in through those. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you think about the big tech giants, what are they? You know, you have ones like Microsoft that are more oriented towards, um, you know, the software itself and buying up platforms and things like that, but clearly have a massive stake in things. You have Google, which starts out as essentially a tool in the internet and then blossoms and grows into a lot of things, including their own operating systems and, you know, cars and things like that. You have Apple as well. Facebook is another one that started out as a platform and then grew into a massive company. LinkedIn and Twitter, you know, they're in that sphere, but Twitter is terrible with pitching ads. LinkedIn is incredible with the sophistication with which they tell you, you know, what you're wanting to buy. Um, Yahoo was at one time a contender, but kind of blew everything. And are there any others? Amazon, of course, right? And so you put all these together and then start putting together like the regional ones that, you know, for like Russia or China or places like that. And a lot of power, a lot of raw power concentrated in just a few places. Let's see what else we got in here. Oh, here's a good one. Jed J. In the anonymous online age, what other option is there to curate online discussions other than banning or blocking? Um, I mean, yeah, if you're dealing with anonymous things, although, you know, if you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or things like that, it's not really quite so anonymous, right? You could send a message to the person. Although I don't know if that doesn't exist as an option anymore for YouTube. But you know, like in Facebook or things like that, you could send a message to the person saying, "Hey, you got to knock it off," or dial back on this sort of thing. But that consumes time, and you have to ask: is it really worth it? Are you throwing good time after bad, so to speak? Do you owe it to them to do that, or should you just say, "Listen, you want to act like a jerk? Get treated like a jerk," you know? Um, yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, encyclical. What's the difference between not allowing the president to block people from his feed, but allowing corporations to block people from their platform? Seems rather one-sided. Yeah, you can make a good argument there that corporations shouldn't be able to block people. The argument, of course, is going to be that, you know, we're talking about a publicly elected position. I mean, you might even go and say, well, we make a distinction with public officials between those who are elected and responsible to an electorate and those who are not, like, people in who are appointees in various agencies. Maybe they don't have to be as receptive. And I would say it's on a continuum, right? I wouldn't say it's an on-off switch, although the courts will probably handle it as a kind of on-off switch. Um, I would say the heads of corporations, if they want to be out there and they want to be using their Twitter feed or whatever for promoting their business and talking about policy, then they lay themselves in for carrying on discussions. Perfectly fine for them to outsource it to somebody else. As a matter of fact, Trump would have done so much better. I realize that it's part of his strategy, but um, you know, even plenty of Republicans are like, this is way too much. Somebody else should have handled his Twitter feed a long time ago. Um, but even if you do that, it should still be publicly open. Maybe along with that encyclical, maybe the presidents and chancellors of universities, if they have public feeds, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to block people. I mean, they can always mute them, right? But maybe they shouldn't be allowed to as well, because those are, at least certain state ones, are public trusts, aren't they? Um, Private ones, it gets a little bit tougher. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we've got anything else in here. Oh, we scrolled down a little bit and then it jumped all over the place. Okay, here we go. So, Mr. Guy 561, I'm fine with people blocking others for spam accounts and legitimate harassment, but blocking for having a different political opinion or philosophical position on a topic is problematic. Yeah, and usually, like in my case, if people get blocked, they may in fact have a different political opinion or philosophical position, but they've been a dick about how they talked about it, right? And that's what got them blocked. It wasn't just having a different opinion. I mean, here's one of the things that often happens, right? Somebody will chime in on something, and it'll be some long rant, and I'll say, wow, that's a lot of verbiage about that, right? And then they start firing stuff off, right? They start reading all sorts of things in. You blah, 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 right? And I'm like, didn't say that. And if you ever see me saying, good luck with your studies, that's my sort of sign off. That's me saying, I'm not pursuing this conversation any further. And then a lot of times they want to pursue it further. And that's how they get themselves blocked or banned. So that's what happens quite often. And it looks like Nikki has a follow-up. Are you talking about arguments for or against religion there? I mean, that would fit into it. Really, anything that's controversial, that could be a reason why somebody would block, right? And I do think you shouldn't just block because you find out that somebody's opposed to what values you hold. But if they act like a jerk in how they're going to talk about it, that you don't have to put up with that, right? All right, principled uncertainty. Living in Europe, censorship is a painful topic. I loathe quashing discussion, but somebody spamming your feed or doxing has to be warned, then dealt with. Yeah, notice you're willing to warn them. If it's something egregious, I don't even bother with a warning. I just block them and delete the stuff, because there's sort of you could call it a unwritten social contract. If you're going to enter into discussion with other people, it has to be at least to some degree civil, and you can't get away with saying, well, it feels civil to me. No, that's it. We live in a society with other people who don't automatically have to give us a pass. And yeah, censorship is handled differently in Europe. I would say that there, at least with respect to certain things, there's more openness in some countries, but there's also some things where no, you just simply can't talk about that. I mean, here in America, you can debate, how bad the Nazis were. You can even take the Nazi side and things like that. I knew people doing that when I was a kid. Can't do that in Germany. That's simply off it's out of the range of possibility. But you can certainly go somewhere else and discuss it, right? If you want to, if you feel the need to. Um, all right. Encyclical. What's the difference between trolling and satirical journalism? It's just an updated version of satire for the internet age. I don't buy that. If you're a journalist, you're doing journalism. Random trolling is, is not the same thing as journalism. Journalism involves actually doing some research and investigation and maybe editing a bit. And I'm not gonna say that distinction is eroded. So that's some troll just randomly sounding off about stuff or saying the same thing that they happen to have done, a little bit of research, meaning like they looked at Wikipedia, somehow counts as journalism. Well, we should give all the trolls, we should issue them press cards and let them into things. I don't think so. I mean, I don't even consider myself a journalist, right? And I do some live tweeting and stuff like that, but I don't say I'm a journalist because of that. All right. Mike Ray, what do you think Marx would have to say about the relationship between content creators and YouTube? He would say it's exploitative. I mean, you don't have to be Marx to say that. Everybody says that. YouTube giveth and YouTube taketh away, right? You remember the adpocalypse a while back when they changed the algorithms and everybody was up in arms because they'd come to be so dependent on making their money on YouTube with, makeup tutorials or kittens or, gaming stuff. And suddenly they were thrown into disarray by that. Hey, YouTube offers the framework and they definitely take their cut. And they, I think part of what really bothers people about YouTube and about talking more broadly about Facebook or about Google rankings for things is that the processes are so untransparent. And in order to get insight into it, you either have to have insiders that or you have to be, very wealthy. You already have to be, so you already got to be sort of like on the winning side to derive stuff. And from a Marxist perspective, Marx would say, yeah, of course, that's just how capitalism tends to work. Now, what would be a solution to that? I don't know. I haven't thought through very much of that. Caitlin Faribault, can you say a little bit more about Umberto Eco's vision? He didn't really have a vision as such. He's a very important contributor to understanding semiotics and the philosophy of language and how language interfaces with our entire range of meaning. So the internet is it's not just one thing. It offers a number of different possibilities or formats for new ways of conveying information and denoting. I mean, he covers a wide range of topics in his books. He's a systematic kind of guy. I would actually start with his theory of semiotics and start reading that, and you're going to see all sorts of really cool connections come up. Principled uncertainty. No opinion is too hot to handle. Debates driven off the public square go toxic. I would say some of those debates are already toxic, and they're fine with being driven off of the public square, except that they don't. Their egos get bruised, But many of them are already toxic, and I don't think that we have to admit every single thing in whatever the public square happens to be. And I'll tell you, going back to the original topic, no one single content producer's platform or channel is the public square. So I think it's perfectly fine for individual channels or even large institutional things to say, here's the limits. We're not going beyond this, And do they have to do it all in advance? No. It can be done, on a case-by-case basis. It can be done with general policies. I think all of that is quite all right. But you want to have at least some possibility of transparency, some possibility of, if there's an honest mistake, getting some redress for it. Um, yeah. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Hmm, TK. Imagine if the government had to provide people with a social security sort of social media if social media becomes a human right in the future. So, what are we imagining there? Something like, I guess, um, some sort of social media network that the government itself would provide, and then like anybody could put whatever they wanted on it. Um, yeah, it'd be interesting. Would it actually function well, or would it like always be 30 steps behind their major competitors? You know? And then what sort of headaches would the government itself get into? They'd have to like figure out what can be allowed and what can't be allowed, and then it would change like every election sequence. New administration comes in. This is now okay. This is not okay. Um, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Um, all right, let's see what we got here. Oh, here's a great question from Betterment Project. What do I think about the difference between a philosophy and what movements it produces in the public, which those who are academics of the philosophy only say, well, that's not what it is? Um, I mean, we'd have to think of some examples of that. Are we talking about, like, say, Nietzsche, where, you know, people read Nietzsche and get excited, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to be part of the Ubermensch. I'm going to be part of the master race," or something like that. And then you're like, "Well, Nietzsche actually said all these other things instead." I guess that could be part of it, or you could say, with Marxism, right? Um, but where does this really come up all that often, where philosophers are being used as the pretext for this sort of stuff? I mean, we can think of lots of historical situations, like Aristotle being harnessed sort of against himself to justify antebellum slavery, enslaving Africans in the United States, or Native Americans in South America. Um, but we do have, I guess we do have the thing where like people are picking up on classical philosophy and deforming it in the name of Western civilization by some people who have no clue what Western civilization actually is, let alone how it would possibly be defended. Um, and we have plenty of people on the left, by the way, picking up whatever in an eclectic way, whatever they like from whoever, and turning it into quotes and using it for justifications. I mean, uh, we could go on and on about this. What do I think about that? Well, I think that that's kind of inevitable. You're not going to really, you can't police people and say, "Oh, you must not talk about Marx this way," or "You must not talk about Aristotle this way." Um, what good is that going to do? I mean, you can write an op-ed piece if you want. The clue is there. The key is not to like come down from the top and just like impose a lot of rules. The key is to like engage with those audiences and offer better stuff. I mean, it's amazing that YouTube is here. And if people want to actually get the straight dope on Aristotle or Anselm or Hegel, they can. They got to do a little bit of work to do it, right? Get past the 5 minute glitzy, high production, low, intellectual content videos. But that's not hard to do, right? If you want to find people who actually know their business about Aristotle online and can talk to a contemporary, general audience, it's there. So that's where we ought to be concentrating our I say our forces and our thought. Most academic philosophers totally unsuited for that. Some of them think that they're good at that, and then you watch them and you're like, oh, not very good. But there's quite a few more that could be doing it, that would be good at it, and we don't encourage it at all. All right. Mr. Guy, it's natural for people to avoid information that challenges their belief system. Banning facilitates this way too easily. Before the internet, people had to defend their beliefs with others. No, they didn't. I mean, let's be honest about before the internet. People lived in just as many silos before the internet as they do now in the age of the internet. I mean, just read through the social science literature from before the internet, and you'll see people worried about that sort of thing. You know, now banning facilitates that way too easily. So what? We should remove banning. We should just let people troll as much as they like. You know, is that going to be helpful, or should we maybe we have to have a commission to review banning? I mean, we can say that banning may not be allowing people to ban may not be the best option in many cases, but I don't see a better one yet. Anything that we propose to try to fix it seems more problematic than the original practice, doesn't it? Let's see. Brabbit, a lot of time trolling is building your argument by throwing an extreme out there and receiving the feedback. I'll just take your word for that. I don't know too many trolls because I don't people who troll, I don't want to hang out with them, and I'm not interested in talking with them. If that's what it takes to build your argument is to be a dick to people, I know plenty of other good ways to build arguments, So, I it could be that 90% of the trolls out there are honestly motivated with trying to build the best argument possible. That doesn't seem like the case to me, but who knows? Betterment Project example would be deconstruction and postmodernism in academics and in public. These are very different things. And when the people critique the public version, there's always academics who say, "Oh, you don't understand that." And they're right about that. I mean, people who talk about deconstruction and postmodernism and haven't actually studied this stuff should shut the hell up. Same thing with cultural Marxism. Jesus, every time I hear somebody talk about that, it's like my ears just sort of close over, and I'm like, well, this is a waste of time listening to this person. And likewise, a lot of critiques from the left of authors on the right. Aristotle's just about enforcing slavery. Well, there's a dummy. I guess I don't need to listen to this person anymore, at least on this topic, because they're going to be a waste of my time. We here's the thing. If you want to talk in jargon about stuff, you got to know what the jargon actually means and what its source is. Doesn't mean you have to be able to write a dissertation on it, but you have to have done more than just Wikipedia'd it or listen to some YouTube videos. I have zero sympathy with the people who jabber on about deconstruction, postmodernism, how Derrida ruined things, and haven't looked into any of this stuff. I don't see any point in listening to them, and I'm a pretty middle of the road kind of guy. So those are great ways to lose the few allies that you might have in the world of ideas, doing that sort of thing. So yeah, let's see what else we've got. Oh, a lot more other stuff here. All right. A lot of back and forth between commenters here too. Michael Piscarino, as a sophomore in college, time is big. Every minute is valuable, and you're right in that you can't get it back once it's used up, wasted. I'm glad that you're understanding that as a sophomore in college. It took me a lot longer to learn that myself. I oftentimes have to learn things through experience that I should be able to learn through, reading other people's reflections on things. But yeah, that's true. Time is an important resource. Kanaglevi, I wonder if there could be an antitrust case against the companies that censored InfoWars. They all compete in the business of propagating news, and it seems like they colluded to crush InfoWars. Demonstrate collusion, and then you've got a start. But if you can't demonstrate it, then you're just doing conspiracy theories, which is what InfoWars was really so good at, right? And then you're kind of you're showing that maybe InfoWars and the approach that it had was kind of crap. You know, and you know, if you can show collusion, good. Go ahead and do that. Um, all right. Now, King Ali, wait, YouTube makes minus and Google pays for it. How do they exploit you? I'm not sure what you're saying there, but I mean that's something you can do some research on. Um, you for the amount of work that content producers do, they're not seeing very great rewards. So take a look at that. And cyclical, I probably should have used the word polemicism instead of satirical journalism, but I feel the point still stands. Oh, so they're being polemical, like say Schopenhauer or Nietzsche. Most trolls are not really, intellectual, brilliant stars or something like that. As a matter of fact, I really love this NPC meme that's circulating around because it brings so many things together. If you're just parroting, somebody else's stuff, I don't care where you're coming from, you really are kind of an NPC, right? You're not making any sort of agency contribution of your own to discussion. And that's what I think a lot of trolls basically do, So you can call it polemicism. I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, sure, there's polemical stuff that's really like down in the dirt, but again, you know, there's some great stuff out there. I mean, let's take somebody who's a great polemicist, Mencken, who sometimes you cringe when you read some of the stuff that he writes today, but he's really good at what he does, and he's kind of an interesting guy. Really, that's what trolls are all doing. I just don't buy it. Martin Christian has a tendentious argument here. If your Twitter account is like your house and the president should not be allowed to ban people in his Twitter account, then the president can't kick people out of the White House. Except that the Twitter account isn't like your house. I said it's like, your porch, or it could be like your house, but it could also be like your studio or things like that. And you can kick people out of places like that, and people can be kicked out of the White House for all sorts of other reasons, like, I don't know, security or convenience or things like that, right? But you could make that argument and do a video on it or something like that. In order to hold, do you think blocking people blurs morality, like confusing being bothered by what is unjust? Maybe for some people. I think the more that you work in ethics and train yourself in ethics, probably the less likely that's going to be the case. I'm sure some people, yeah, ban and block all the time for all sorts of stupid reasons or unjust reasons. But I think, again, blocking, I think, is actually quite just. Let's see here. Nikki Michelle T. Seems a lot of the troll pages do is make a joke that centers around X being true when it's not. Over time with jokes or satire, it seems to convince people pretty fast. Can satire be a weapon? All over the map there. Can satire be a weapon? Yeah. I mean, it helped topple the regime of Louis XIV, didn't it? And yeah, satire can of course always be some sort of weapon, maybe a blunt force, an ineffective weapon sometimes. Sometimes it can be very well directed. I'll have to take your word on what troll pages do. I try to spend as little time with trolls as possible, quite frankly, because again, got to have your priorities. But yeah, people do get convinced, but people get convinced of stupid things all the time. This is not a exception to the rule. The level of public discourse in the United States is pretty low, and it's been low my entire lifetime. Now that means that you can raise it up, but all right. Let's see. Encyclical VA Shiva has suggested using a post office provided email address, video uploading page, and blog page. Okay, so the post office is going to have all the servers required for maintaining that entire network. Video is a lot of data, right? And then if people are interacting back and forth, That's going to be a lot of data to store as well, but I mean, it's feasible. Maybe that would even be a good use of tax money. Um, I mean, it need to be. There's all sorts of liability issues there you need to explore, but that's good. Um, TK, people being sent to government-run social media etiquette courses to get back on after transgressions. Um, well, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Um, that could be good, I guess. Depends on the courses. I mean, I've taken some courses through the NIH, and I have to take like all these courses because I'm an academic teacher on like slips and falls or Title IX and all that, and they're almost invariably terrible. I don't think they promote a lot of learning, and they let alone like actual attitude or behavior change. But they could be a start. Um, let's see here. Richard Elliott, my pastor blocked me on Twitter. Ouch. Yeah, when you've got people that you're close to, that can be a real issue. Isn't it interesting now, this is a bit of a digression, how like, you almost feel hostage in many respects. You got to keep this person as a contact, can't, block this person, even though you're like, or you can't even just like decouple from them, unfriend or no longer follow, because you're supposed to stay connected with people. I used to, worry about that. Now I just, if I don't want to follow somebody, I just, unfollow them or unfriend them if I think, they're not a good use of my time. Every once in a while, I go through my LinkedIn contacts and I'm like, yeah, I can prune some of these away. YouTube, because I follow so many channels and I've just clicked every once in a while on a variety of them, including many who I disagree with, but I wanted to sort of keep tabs on when I had the intention of actually doing that. Um, that I haven't gone through and pruned for a long time, but I probably should. All right. Let's see. Betterment Project. Yeah, interaction seems to be the right move. Ethics of virtue and discussion, perhaps. Interaction is the right move when it's the right move. If you're talking virtue ethics, they're not going to say across the board, well, you should always interact with a troll. It would really depend on the right time, right person, right reasons. Is there really a possibility of having a productive conversation or not? Um, yeah. All right. I'm getting close to the end for today. So let me see if we've got any others. I don't even know what Rob is saying here. The NPC meme is false flag NPC meme. That's just it's like a bunch of stuff thrown together there. And you can like a meme without endorsing everything about it and everything people are doing about it. What I like about it is that it captures the fact that it captures a social phenomenon that has been going on from before the internet, meaning that there's lots of people who just endlessly chatter and don't have any original thoughts of their own. And I don't mean original and like groundbreaking or anything like that, but they're basically just repeating whatever they're programmed to do. And very often that includes stuff like, I am an original thinker, I am a free thinker, stuff like that. It's a great idea. It makes so many things fall into place when you think about that. And I say that as somebody who, encountered NPCs back as a kid playing D&D, right? So, all right, let's see if we got anything. Well, here's a good one. Richard Elliott III. You had a nasty troll a few years ago, creepy bastard. You dealt with it quick, fast, inspired confidence in me. Not sure who it would be because I've had a lot of nasty trolls over the years, right? And yeah, I deal with them pretty quick because they're not worth spending much of my time on. There's sort of people sort of build up sort of a hierarchy. I would say based on kind of like trust and your worth spending the time reading the comments on. And trolls are at the very bottom. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Let me see if I can. All right, let's take a few others. Rob Robert said, "What I meant is the people that the NPC meme was immediately overused and adopted by the NPC." Yeah, that's probably the case, right? That's the thing about memes. You don't control them. Luca says, "This is such a coincidence. I got comment banned for trolling Varg Vikernes, black metal legend and murderer, now neo-Nazi prepper, not even 2 hours ago. Can't say I feel guilty." Yeah, I'm sure I probably had a lot of people who I've been banned and blocked by, but I don't even bother to check myself. And then let's see. Cobain, how do you feel about aggressively deplatforming bad actors that are trying to obfuscate discourse? People that consciously spread lies or misinformation that damage fruitful discussion. So deplatforming is a bit different than just like blocking, right? Because there you're trying to agitate to get a platform itself to remove somebody. And it only works if you can A, get a lot of other people involved, and B, if the platform cares enough about public opinion. How do I feel about it? I I see some worries because it's mainly because we do have just a few big platforms. But yeah, I don't see it as entirely illegitimate. And then all right, Der Zweig. So what about the language cultural barrier on the internet? I mean, you can have people who are from a culture, I guess, who are much more aggressive, but that's tough for them. I mean, if they're going to interact with people on a worldwide network, figure out the mores. Um, all right, let's see about this trolling thing. Lyndon Bailey, Socrates is kind of trolling the whole of Athens, a higher form of trolling. No, let's not try to make trolling into something that it's not, right? Let's recognize it as the low level, generally not very intellectually committed, having fun at somebody else's expense thing that it is. Let's not try to pretend that it was somehow serving some greater cause or something like that. So there's some discussion back and forth about that. Yeah, I mean, Socrates wasn't just trying to screw with people. There was a point to it. He was ironic quite a bit of the time. And notice here, I'll end on this. If you want to see the sort of mixed attitudes towards irony, read Aristotle and read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. He actually criticizes Socrates for his ironic self-deprecation. And it's interesting to note that, right? Because Aristotle is just 2 generations removed from him and is studying, in the Socratic lineage. But yeah, that's his view. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. I got to do, unfortunately, a lot of course development and grading and stuff like that today. The course development I don't mind doing. The grading is the bane of professors. And so thanks for all of the great questions and comments. I didn't get to a lot of the ones that are sort of off topic, but we'll have our AMA, coming up in November. I don't know if I think I set a date for that. You can find it on my Facebook page. And you should be also in the Reason.io calendar. So if you've got other questions about other things, go ahead and bring them up then. And oh yeah, Bishop Eta, yeah, very nice. Ordered whole. ZK, one day maybe an AI will grade papers for you. What? Well, maybe, but I don't know if they'll do it well. That's the problem. So and it's important actually for me to see what the students are understanding and not understanding. So I do complain about it, but I probably shouldn't. All right. I'll see you some other time. And I will have another one of these on Facebook coming up later on this month. Same topic. So we'll be doing these pop-ups. Oh, Lucas says, is there a set schedule for these pop-ups? No, that's the point. They're pop-ups. My Patreon supporters find out in advance at the beginning of the month. Everybody else finds out the day of the pop-up. That's because they're pop-ups. All right. So on that, I'm going to leave all of you. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I'll see you in the ether.